see me typing during the live. But hey, hello everyone. I have Greg Van Der Gaast here, a proactive InfoSec. He's now an author as well, head of information security for University of Salford. So let's jump straight into the conversation. Today, the discussion is about how to communicate with the board, how to communicate cybersecurity with the board. Not exactly convincing the board, but communicating. So, Greg, share your thoughts first, and then we'll get into the Q&A.
Why not convince? So my first kind of question back to you is, what are most people trying to get from the board?
Money, support, right? And there are things like people say, oh, the board doesn't care. They don't listen, Why? So, there is so much negativity around it, as you pointed out in one of the podcasts in the past.
Yeah, so I think, and the first thing seems to be money. And I think, and in private, most CISOs will agree, we're overspending as it is. I mean, I was at a kind of closed door dinner back in December, and when asked, by how much could you reduce your budget without actually impacting your level of assurance, the average answer was about 35%. So why are we even going and asking for more money? And I talk a lot about, let's be more proactive. And it's that analogy of the car factory that builds the cars and then lobs them into the parking lot from the third floor. And then everyone is rushing and hiring thousands of people and getting tooling and frameworks and vendors and products and solutions and processes and certifications and awards about how fast we can fix all these cars, but no one's fixing the assembly line. So everyone is still getting hacked for basic hygiene stuff. So really, I don't think we need that much more money in most organizations. If I had to choose between money and traction, I would choose traction almost every single time, unless it's a situation where you have zero budget whatsoever. I like a much more proactive approach where you address issues upstream, and that does require you to have a lot of traction and a lot of influence. So how do you achieve that, I guess, is the same. And you can use that for, if you have a genuine reason why I need this tool, then by all means, you can do that. I think we're approaching things in the wrong way on a number of fronts. Of course, I'm generalizing and, of course, take everything I say with a grain of salt. But I think we talk too much about risk. We are obsessed with risk, and we are making everything about risk, and everything is about risk, according to us. But risk is actually a really terrible way of conveying anything. It's very abstract, and it kind of leads me into metrics, where you have a situation, you have a concrete situation of, there's a vulnerability, there's something here that could impact us negatively. And we're going to translate that into a risk and a number and a color and this or that. And then you're going to present, you've taken all the context out of it. You've taken everything that's relatable about it away. And then you're going to go and present that to someone on a board who's probably non-technical and will likely interpret your number or color or whatever it is you're talking about completely differently than you do. And then you're surprised that they don't understand. So I think it's a much better way of stop talking in terms of risk and start actually engaging and involving them and explaining to them what the actual situation is, and let them take a role in that. You hear a lot like, oh, boards don't understand risk. I assure you, boards understand business risk far better than we do. And that it's actually quite arrogant of us to say, this has this level of risk, therefore you must act on it, when we don't know about 90% of the rest of the business. And a good... And one more reason I hate metrics, you can manipulate them any way you want. There's no concrete way of, a 1 to 10 score based on what? It's completely arbitrary. And we're supposed to serve the business, right? So one example I give is, if I've got a risk, let's say there's a £200,000 risk to the business, right? And it's only going to cost me £50,000 to mitigate that risk. Oh, well, that's a good investment. You spend 50, you save 200,000. Yes, but the marketing department can probably turn that 50,000 into 5 million. So by using the same logic, I should now be letting that risk go and giving my money to the marketing department. Watch CISOs all of a sudden start shifting numbers around so they can keep that money away from the marketing department and for themselves. So that's the one way where ultimately the board is responsible. The board is in charge of determining what risk is acceptable or not. And I feel like we have to let them decide. We have to present the situation in an understandable way to them and let them make those decisions. And I really like to let them handle the numbers. It saves me loads of time, and they understand better than I do the impact that this has on research, on engineering, on marketing, on sales, and whatnot. They'll know better than me, and I find they kind of respect the fact that you're letting them do that, and the fact that they're having to put the numbers into the scenario that you're presenting them. It kind of involves them, and it creates kind of an emotional investment on their part. And then they feel like they're part of the solution. And because they've started thinking about it, they'll get more involved. So I think, we need to start telling them what they're supposed to be doing and just be more understood by them in terms of the actual reality. I talk about this a lot in other contexts where everything is a control or a risk set or a framework or this or that. No one ever really speaks in plain English about the business and the processes that are right in front of their face. And if you do it in that way, they will understand, and you don't have to filter anything out, and they will relate directly to what's there. And assuming that you're being honest with yourself and the organization, if it's a genuine risk, they will action it. If you are just trumping up numbers to get money, then they probably won't, and they would be right to say no to your request.
Where does the soft skills come into the picture in this? How important soft skills are? Because you came from a technical background, I came from a technical background. Most of the people that are talking here, we are talking about here as well. We're from a technical background, would like to mention the vulnerability numbers and technology tools and stuff like that. But how exactly do you actually talk to the board?
I think I would use analogies. Analogies are amazing. They help you convey stuff. Like the car factory is one way I like to use as an analogy. Recently I had to explain the concept of, you've eliminated 99% of vulnerabilities, therefore you've eliminated 99% of the risk. And I'm like, no. Whether a building has 100 open doors, or one open door, you're still going to get in just as easily. And that made them realize, actually that makes a lot of sense. So all this work is only being able to see the forest from the trees. Now comes that last bit. And that's why being holistic in your security approach is also so important. But that's a different thing. No, analogies, I love analogies. They're a great way of communicating. Soft skills are very important. You have to be able, again, I think we need to focus, we need to de-indoctrinate ourselves from all the terminology that we're used to using and the tech stuff. Look at the situations that we actually face, and then find a way of making our particular situation relatable to them. I'll finish that there. If you have another question, otherwise I'm going to go on with something else.
Why do you think there is so much negativity? Is it people lack of soft skills, lack of communication, or just people sitting at their desk and expecting the board to come to them?
Yeah, I think it's all of those. I think it's part of it. I mean, we expect them to understand us, but we don't understand them in the same way that they don't understand us. So somebody has to make that effort. And you can sit there and you can complain about it, or you can go and do the extra mile. In Taken, Liam Neeson did not say, "Well, I told you not to go to Paris, honey. Tough luck." No, he went out and he did absolutely everything he could, finding every scenario, every roundabout way of going and getting his daughter back. So it's the same kind of scenario. You will find resistance. Set yourself that goal. Psych yourself up to achieve that. We're very technically minded, and our goal is to, install this solution or reach this or reach that. I say, well, what if you make our goal of make that person not think I'm a jerk anymore? Make that person consider my opinion. If you set those as goals, then you start kind of psyching yourself up for it and focusing more on what can I do to achieve that. And you have to have soft skills. You have to have situation specific out of the box thinking, because there's no course, there's no manual that's going to teach you how to convince, Joe Schmo, the IT director at this particular organization, that you need this, or finance director Helen something at that one. You have to kind of get to learn them, to know them, and interact and figure out what makes people tick and how influence them, basically.
Yeah, go on.
On that note, I think it's really important to lay the groundwork. You have to be. It's very difficult as a kind of technical person, or they'll presume that you're a technical person, and they're fed up with all the stuff that we've been spewing at them for the last 20 years. So we've kind of made it difficult because of what we've done historically to be approachable, or people really want to avoid security people in general, just because of the kind of legacy that we've left behind. So I think it's very important to kind of prepare the ground and establish a brand and a reputation as someone worth listening to. So someone who really goes out of their way to meet people, to collaborate, to understand, to enable rather than say no, to go out of their way, to contribute in many ways outside of the job spec. Even on a broader scale outside your company, have a LinkedIn presence, speak, create articles, anything, so that, if they look you up, they see, this person actually has quite a few things to say. They seem to be respected in their, and that will make people want to listen to you. It'll prime them for your words before you even show up in the meeting. It's very important to kind of build up a reputation, and especially security is known as naysayers. When people talk crap about you behind your back, and then other people from other parts of the business that you've helped, no, actually, you know what, they came to us and they really helped us out. It's like, oh, really? I wouldn't have thought they would help people out. And it shifts perceptions, and you do have to lay that groundwork and just kind of engage fanatically is the advice I always give, because that makes you someone worth listening to, and it really eases that initial approach.
Absolutely, it's a two-way street, isn't it? And it's both ways. It goes both ways, and you build those relationships with the board, build the credibility, and also one of the things we spoke about in the past was the ability to articulate what your thoughts to the board. Being board of directors, be very busy in their whatever they do. How do you go about that?
I think it can be quite tricky, actually. It's a situation I'm facing right now. Typically, you want to go. Well, first of all, there's this misconception that people, you have to report to the board. You don't. They're human beings. They leave the room. The toilets are outside. You can't approach. And I did every time I do a talk, I just pick a random person at the audience, pay them a compliment, ask them if I can buy them a cup of coffee, and no one's ever said no. You can approach, but you do have to have your points, your ducks in a row, your points lined up, your arguments. You do have to have some soft skills at that point and able to communicate quickly and succinctly. But you don't have to blurt everything out in one meeting. It can be a 10-minute conversation that will lead to a 30-minute conversation a month down the line. Make no mistake about this. The way I put it is, if you go into some place and you want to build significant traction, it's going to take you 6 months, a year. Now that seems like a lot of time, and people get very frustrated to not actually having achieved anything, especially kind of my level where you're trying to set up a program. But you won't have done much in year one, but then you'll start having traction. And in year two, you'll have done 5 times what you would have been able to do if you hadn't had that traction. And in year 3, it'll be 10 times. So over a long enough time scale, you'll still achieve way more. It's like most of us are frustrated by limitations and hindrances and stuff. And if I ask someone, if you had absolutely no limitations, would you be able to get 10 times as much work done if you had the authority to do anything you wanted? And most people will say yes. So it's worth taking the time to establish that. So it is a time-consuming process. Don't expect to get more than 15 minutes a month. Don't expect to get more than a quarterly meeting. In the meantime, try to influence any way possible. And it could be, recently purchased a product and got a 95% discount on it. And, the finance director called me, head of procurement called me. And what's the discrepancy between these quotes? And they just started, when it's it's generally, not only are we getting everything, we're actually getting more for 1/20th of the price. And they just kind of, laughed, thought that was great. And that story is probably going to get passed on, 50% chance it's going to get mentioned to his boss. And that's the director of finance who sits on the board. So that's just one more way of, I see a dinner and I saw someone that used to work for the CEO is going to be at that dinner. So I'm going to participate, strike up a conversation. And then if you do see the CEO, it's like, hey, Paul says hello, by the way. So all these little things, as many as you can build up over time in as many different directions. 2/3 may go to waste, but 1/3, word will, if someone hears you mentioned from random places once a week, once every couple of weeks, it's going to keep you in their mind. It's going to establish that fact that you are someone worth of their level, of their entourage, of that worth listening to. So just keep sowing those seeds everywhere you can. But
go on.
Don't like what you were saying, just don't try to overload it all in one shot. It takes time to build up. It's very easy to turn these people off. So just do so.
Did you say 95% discount?
Yes.
Dude, I don't want to sell my car to you. I don't want to be the guy selling the car to you.
I don't think it would work on cars, but if it's a software product, well, say if something costs $500,000 and you've got 25K and it's a piece of software and there's, well, no, it's like, look, I've got 25K, take it or leave it, or I'm going to go shop it around to your competitors. And, if you get 2 or 3 of them, chances are within a month you'll get, okay.
Wow.
Maybe
you can consider a career in negotiating.
That's the budget I have now is, according to Gardner, is like 1/300th of the average budget. So you have to get creative, you have to push, and it's if you face your limitations instead of complaining about them, it's actually quite surprising how much you can achieve, and that's not just financial. If you really think about the way I mentioned, it's a long-term thing. The way I like to put it is like put your goals as to what you want your estate to look like. Picture that, but put that 3, 4, 5 years into the future, and then all the obstacles, but you don't know the path to get there. So all the obstacles you're facing, they're just kind of redirection to show you the path. And if you really try every step of the way, you'll get there eventually. Just keep making that slow, steady progress. But that has nothing to do with it has to do with communication as well, but just general strategy approach.
Absolutely.
Build your brand like crazy, and people don't realize this, but if you feed an executive, so most executives are 60-year-old white guys. They can barely install an app on their iPad. That's the level of tech savvy. Okay, if you could actually teach them something interesting about information security, and I have a fairly different approach of doing it, which is actually more relatable because it's more proactive. If you teach them like a little bite-sized nugget of that, they will find it interesting. They don't want to be overloaded. If you just teach them one simple little thing, they'll go on their golf course, they'll talk about that to their golf buddies and actually brag that they know more about InfoSec than Bobby does, So you can actually build that. You can make them curious and want to get involved. And if you make them part of the solution, then they feel a little bit extra value by, this is just one more problem I'm solving for my business, or in a woman's voice. That can help. It shouldn't be as intimidating as most people think it is.
On that note, right? There was a meme going around about guy or a girl counting pennies before the breach, and after the breach they're counting this bundle of notes and stuff. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think part of it is inevitable, but the fact that it's the way people respond to it that bothers me, because they're almost waiting for it to happen as opposed to actively trying to get that support before. And again, the amount of waste in information security is staggering. It's absolutely staggering. I mean, this is the first place, because the budget was 0 when I started. It's the first place where I've increased the budget. It's still less than 1/10 of what our peers are spending. And I've not worked in a single place before where I couldn't reduce the budget by 30 to 50%. I mean, so much money is just going to waste. I mean, when I worked at Capita, they'd spent £1 million on SIEM monitoring absolutely nothing, and no one even knew. It's just throwing money at problems without ever actually having the duty of care to actually look at the situation and how can we actually best do this And there's very cheap ways of. I'll give a shout out to Eliza May Austin, who sells Pocket Seam. It's dirt cheap, but people will happily spend. People will give her flack for the product. Maybe it doesn't do absolutely everything, but they're spending 100 times the money on a product that maybe does more, but those features aren't even enabled. So you're wasting 100 times the money. So we like to blame everything on, oh, they don't listen to us, or, oh, we don't have the money. But really, I think we can be a lot more altruistic. And it's part of the thing about security is people don't really see security.
Yeah.
So on one end, it's, oh, they don't listen to us. But on the other end, it's like no one's complaining when you're all watching the World Cup on the SOC monitors and not doing your jobs either. So there's very little visibility, and we tend to use that as an excuse to get away with stuff. So it's that if you have the altruism instead, and you truly, truly care, that will shine through and people will start listening to you. If you want to complain, then not so much.
Eliza is brilliant, by the way.
And sassy.
Yeah. She is. Right. For things like, security awareness training, you're going to the board for a budget approval, or your line manager for a budget approval for security awareness training. How do you justify the cost for a service like security awareness training?
That's a good one. To be honest, I've kind of shied away from most security awareness training, probably because it's so bad at where I'm now that there's no point in going to a full-fledged offering. It depends. I don't have a good answer for that one. I wasn't ready for that question. I'm more around technical controls, but it's hard to calculate. I mean, it really depends how you do it. Because I do think a lot of those things, I mean, you need awareness training, but I think most of the awareness training isn't human enough. So the retention isn't quite there. I think you can probably do just as well with building rapport, building communication. I'll give you an example. Like I had when I worked for Capital a few years ago, there was this. I've told the story a few times. This guy in a call center, and he was heavily disabled, and among other things, he needed hearing aids. And I just started there, and there was this email chain, almost 60 emails long, between HR and legal and InfoSec. So basically, he couldn't fit the headphones over his hearing aids, but he could keep the hearing aids in and just plug in this USB or Bluetooth device into the base. But it was a policy violation, so they didn't allow him to use it. So it had basically been bouncing around between legal and HR and InfoSec for 9 months. And I was like, does anyone know how this device even works? So, have them bring it in tomorrow, 15-minute show and tell. Look, you got 4-foot walls all around you. Everybody else has access to the same data. There's no additional risk here. Use it all you want. And that's it. You just help one person out. But that entire floor of people see you helping that person out. And the interesting thing was we had all these Clean Desk and GDPR posters. We still had loads of events. The following month, the number of incidents dropped 32%. And the reason was there was a human face associated to InfoSec, and it was someone that actually helped Khalid, our colleague. And I think you can do awareness far more cost effectively that way by setting up internal champions and that kind of thing. So I kind of struggle with that argument. I mean, that said, there are some niche awareness companies that use very clever psychology, but the principles are interesting. I think it's a very difficult one to claim on cost efficiency, because I also think that most breaches are caused by a lack of information security, not so much on the user side as the InfoSec team side. You've got, systems aren't being patched, asset management's not up to speed, configurations are bad, builds are bad, security is saying, oh, that's IT's job. Well, instead of expecting all the users to do your job for you and mitigate all the risk, why don't you build up some engagement and get IT to fix these things, or fix them for IT? That's an easier way. It's a more foolproof way of doing it, instead of just expecting the users to keep everything out because you can't manage to fix what's inside.
Yeah, it's not end all be all. You need to have all sorts of controls in place. Right. One more question I have for you. I'm sure we had this conversation earlier as well. Introverts. do you think most of us who are working in tech, or is it a myth, or if there are introverts, what can they do to make the communication successful for them?
I'm not sure we're all introverts, to be honest, but there
I think
certainly
I
are.
am.
Well, it's not like 99% of
No,
us are
joking.
introverts. I would think. I know I used to be far more introverted. Now I'm loud to a fault, but I think you can go over it. You can do, and it's soft skills are becoming increasingly important. And if you are kind of an introverted technical person, I would strongly encourage you to develop your soft skills. It will benefit you tremendously in life and in your career. It's not that I don't believe that you can slap an introvert label on someone and they will always be an introvert. And you've got a lot of cats there, Jay, or children. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have one daughter, but she
Yeah.
she seems like I have half a dozen daughters.
Yeah, we saw on the call the other week.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean it's going to be more of a personal challenge for introverts. But at the same time, you may just have more self-reflection. You may have actually more intelligent things to say once you step out of that. But you have to work it yourself. Unfortunately, there's no
Right. Quick one. Are there any books you would recommend apart from your own one, Proactive InfoSec? Any other books you would recommend to for?
It's called Rethinking InfoSec. I don't know why everyone's getting the title wrong the last couple of days.
Oh, is it? Sorry.
The only one that comes to mind and is Mansour Hassib's InfoSec Leadership.
Right.
And kind of similar to mine, it's more focused on those soft skills and communicating and being proactive. It's far less technical, and it's interesting because I had several people tell me, "No, I'm not going to buy your book because it's too technical for me." I was like, "There's nothing technical in there. There's just that assumption." And some people say, "Well, I'm just an analyst, or I'm just a pen tester, and I'm just like, yeah, but you are going to progress, and you need to understand how things fit together, and you need to understand how you're going to influence, and maybe when they lead other people." So I think it's actually important, even though it's not present in your current role today, to kind of plant those seeds of holistic thinking and leadership in people's heads. So I would, top of my head, the Hassib is Mansour's is definitely the number one book other than my own that I would recommend.
What is it called? InfoSec Leadership, did you say?
I think it's called, is it Cybersecurity Leadership?
It's okay, fine. We'll find it. Right, I'm conscious of the time. I know you had a hard stop at 1:30. So is that
Cybersecurity Leadership?
Cybersecurity Leadership. Awesome. I'll put that in the comments below. What's your parting piece of advice? Sorry.
Be altruistic. Build relationships like crazy. You will leverage them. You will always be proactive. This is an interesting period where to get your side hustle going, work on developing yourself, come out of this stronger. Build up some. I'm not terribly disciplined, so this actually gave me time to hunker down and finish the book and write another book. Leverage opportunities and invest in yourself. A lot of that work will pay off. You won't see it, but a year, 2, 3, 5 years down the line, it will pay off massively.
It takes time. Yeah, it's a compound effect, right? Slowly. It takes time, and it will pay off eventually in the end. Great. Thank you very much, my friend. Once again.
Thank you, Jay.
All right, and stay safe.
Thank you. Yeah. Everyone's saying that, but yeah, I guess it's true.
Keep other people safe.
Yeah, let's hope we can all go back to normal soon.
Yeah. When did we last hear, like, just by watching TV, we are saving lives?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have Netflix or Amazon or Sky or even a TV license, but I've been focusing more on writing, on thinking, on posting, on conceptualizing. Yeah. Another thing for traction, like, if today, if you're in a frustrated situation from your standpoint, so now I can't go out and engage people. I can't ask people out for a cup of coffee and this and that. So I'm just creating a report about, like, this is everything that we need to do, that they can then read, and one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually run it through a vendor, so it looks like it's from an outside source, so it's more credible. That still works. So little things like that. Like you can still, if you feel like you're hitting a wall, stand back, try something new. It's a good period to try that right now.
Absolutely. Rethinking again. Right. Brilliant. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Jay.
Have a nice one. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. All right. That's ended.